my name is Cassie and I'm the creator of Pieces of Scrap, and in today's video we're going to be doing another episode of the Will It Crochet series. If you're unfamiliar with the first episode of this series, my husband created some AI generated patterns for me around Christmas time to be delivered to me as a gift instead of receiving a crochet pattern book that he planned on getting me for Christmas, but turns out it was only a pre-order and I won't get it until this month in February, so that's coming up quickly. But that first episode came out really well and people seem to really enjoy it, so I've gone ahead and requested that my husband generate some more patterns for me, and we're going to be trying them out now. So this time around I had my husband email me the patterns, so I have them on my tablet for easier use and also so that I can get a better image for the recording as well for you guys to be looking around. Last time I had the printout and I scanned it into my computer so that I could zoom in on some areas of the pattern, but this time I actually have it digitally, so that'll make editing easier this time. But I've gone ahead and I looked through the pattern because I have all of my yarn ready to go. I picked out the colors that I needed and I also got an idea of what I'm going to be making. So to catch you guys up to speed, we've got two parts of one pattern essentially. So the first pattern is a top hat and monocle, and the second pattern is a crazy fox. So I assume the monocle and the top hat are supposed to be attached to the fox afterwards to kind of combine it and make it one great big pattern. So we have that to look forward to. So aside from picking out the colors that I needed for these patterns, I also took just a general look through them just to see if it was going to make sense. It looks like for the first pattern, the theme is kind of having German titles for things. So for example, there's a hat band and hat crown, and they're translated and bolded in German. So Hut band and Hut Kron. And I kind of figured out that it was German because in high school I actually took 3 years of German, but it really occurred to me that it was German when we got to the assembly section and it says Zusammenbau, which I assume is assembly. I know Zusammen means together, so I kind of caught on around that area. And yeah, other than that, it seems like it's a pretty typical type of pattern. It's not an amigurumi pattern for either of these. It's both, we're working with worsted weight yarn instead of chenille yarn for the hat and monocle. And then for the fox itself, it seems like it's not as important that it's worsted weight, so I chose some chenille Premier Parfait chunky yarn to be working with, and it's in a lot of different colors. But before we talk about that fox pattern, we're just gonna go ahead and get started on this top hat pattern, and I'll read the first page of the pattern for you guys so you know what I'm getting myself into. So materials, we've got worsted weight Schwarze black yarn. Schwarze means black in German. It usually doesn't have the S at the end, so that's a little weird. We're working with a 6mm crochet hook, tapestry needle, scissors, stitch markers, and then it says I also need blocking pins and a mat for blocking, I assume. And then this is something new that we didn't see in the last patterns. We have a gauge in here, which I usually skip when I'm working on normal patterns too, that require you to gauge. And that is the reason why a lot of the time when I'm making like wearables or things like that, it doesn't come out to the right size because I'm too lazy to make a gauge swatch. So it's kind of funny that that's in here. And then we have some abbreviations, and then getting into the pattern itself, we have to chain 120 or any multiple of 12 to make the hat band, which is surprising that it's just like make any multiple of 12. But I guess it doesn't have the reference in there that we're making this top hat for the fox specifically. That's technically a separate pattern. So I guess we're just gonna have to figure out how big it's gonna be. 120 chains might be a little bit too big for this fox, but we will see. And then for row 1, we're double crocheting across to make 119 double crochets. This is going to be a really big top hat. I think we might have to size this down or make the fox first. We will see. Rounds 2 and 3, we are just double crocheting again, and then we're fastening off and weaving in our ends after that. And then we make the hat crown, chain 2. If we switch to rounds instead of rows, I guess that makes sense then. So that first hat band part is a panel, like a rectangle that we're making, and then the crown is a round. It'll be a circle. So we're creating 6 double crochets in a round, and then we are going to just do another round of double crochets, no increases there. And then in round 3, it looks like we will be decreasing. And it's funny because it says that we have to double crochet 2 together. That's what that abbreviation means. And it says see special stitches below, but there's no section in the pattern for special stitches, so that just doesn't exist. Luckily I know what double crochet 2 together means. And then it says to repeat round 3 until the piece measures 8 inches from the beginning. That's a really big hat. I don't think we are going to be making it that large, so we're definitely going to be making that fox first, I think, just so that we can correctly size this top hat and monocle potentially. After we finish the hat crown, we are creating a hat brim. Seems pretty simple. We're doing 6 double crochets in a round, and then we are double crocheting around in the second round, and then we are supposed to repeat that until it reaches 4 inches as well. That's going to be a big old cylinder. I'm not sure that's going to work out for a hat brim, but we'll see. And then it says for assembly, we're supposed to sew the hat band to the hat crown, and then we sew the hat brim to the hat crown as well. So not sure how that's going to work out. We will definitely see. It seems like there's both a hat band and a hat brim. I feel like those are the same thing, so we're just like doubling up the brim of the hat, I guess. And then we move on to the monocle. And there's also a gauge. It's mostly like the same setup as the first page as well, with materials gauge and abbreviations all being basically the same. Gauge is different, definitely. But we're making a monocle frame. We have to chain 40, single crochet. We're creating a rectangle again, it looks like, for the frame. And then the monocle lens, we're creating a circle around, and then we're assembling just by sewing those two things together. Not a lot of anything specific there. Oh, and we finally have reached our special stitches area in the pattern where we can see double crochet 2 together. And that instruction, it's weird that that's all the way at the bottom of the pattern. Very interesting. And then there's some tips and variations at the bottom here about different ways you can change it up. So you can add a lens to your monocle by using a small piece of plastic or glass and sewing it to the center of the monocle lens. I'm not sure how you would sew a piece of plastic or glass especially. That doesn't seem like that can happen. And then it also says to experiment with different yarn colors and textures. So all that being said, I feel like it's really important that we start on the fox pattern first, just so that we can get that sizing correct, so that we can put that hat and that monocle on the fox after we finish there. So I'm gonna go ahead and read through the fox pattern as well, so you can get an idea of what we're going to be doing. So the Crazy Fox pattern has a materials section. We've got medium weight yarn in crazy colors, so I picked out all of those colors listed there, and I also picked out the colors listed below, like the white yarn, the black yarn, and the red yarn. We've got a 6mm crochet hook. We've got our fiber fill, stuffing, scissors, stitch markers. All of that's good. I'm surprised there's a gauge swatch on here as well. That's not really needed for an amigurumi plushie. I've never seen that for an amigurumi plushie. Gauge is specifically not super important, especially with amigurumi plushies, because you can size that up or down however you want to and get the perfect sized amigurumi plushie to like your exact specifications. If you want it to be like a little handheld type thing or like a giant plushie, you can always size up your hook or your yarn to get different sizes there. We've got the same abbreviations as the previous patterns, just chain, double crochet, single crochet, stitch, and slip stitch. And then we go straight into the body, starting with hot pink yarn. Looks like we're going to be doing more double crochets, no single crochets yet anywhere in the pattern from what I'm seeing, which is different definitely for a amigurumi pattern. Usually you're relying on single crochets instead of double crochets to do all of your body work. And then after we finish the body, it tells us that it's time to take a break to drink a glass of cold milk. You deserve it all after all of that crocheting. So that's pretty funny. I don't think we're gonna probably do anything like that. We'll probably just make the body and go straight into the next part of the pattern, because that's what I typically do. I don't really need to take a break in the middle, but that is very funny. It tells us to fasten off after our break, and then we go straight into making the head in yellow yarn. It looks like we are making a bunch more double crochets. We're not decreasing at all, which is really interesting. Then we're fastening off and we're starting ears in the hot pink yarn. And then we're doing a tail in electric blue yarn. Socks are gonna be in the white yarn. And it doesn't look like there's any arms on this fox. We're missing arms if the socks are meant to be the feet, so that's really interesting. It looks like we've got a lot of work cut out for us then, so let's just go ahead and get started. right, guys, I finished all my parts for the fox. I've got 4 socks here, which I assume are supposed to be each of the legs and arms because foxes all kind of have like white paws. So I figured maybe I could just use that same pattern for the arms that are missing. I've got 2 ears and then a tail. As you can see here, these are all the same exact pattern. These are the socks, and here's a tail. It's the same exact pattern, and the ear are also the same exact pattern. So they're all the same exact shape. There's going to be a lot of extremities off the sock that are just like the same thing. Here is our body, and it's not like circular at all or like an oval shape like you typically expect from a body, and this is supposed to be the head. So it's all essentially the same pattern. The body and the head are the only ones that are significantly different, and by significant I don't actually mean significant. Sorry, I'm trying to tuck a yarn tail in right now. But they just have more or less rows from one another. So I'm gonna have to sew these on somehow. I'm thinking like this, and then each of the arms will come off, like the side and the bottom like that. Tail will go on the opposite side from the head, and the ears will go on the top of the head, but I have to stuff the body and the head first, and then I'll start figuring out where I'm gonna put things on this tiny little fox body. Y'all, this is potentially one of the most hilarious things I have ever crocheted before. It kind of reminds me of that meme, the "let me do it for you" meme. You know what I'm talking about? Like that one. It's like one of the dogs that has like a really, really long snout. Like that's what this reminds me of. It's really hilarious. And I love how the colors lined up with the things that I was sewing on. I didn't think it would look this cool, but it's just hilarious. Obviously, there's a lot of gapping in the stitches. That's just because it's made in double crochets. And typically, if you're working with a double crochet or like a half double crochet in amigurumi, you're making loveys in most cases. So it's not meant to be stuffed afterwards. Rhea has come over here very sleepily to join me while, yeah, thanks for telling us how tired you are, as I was explaining this. But yeah, I just think it's really hilarious, and I can't wait to display this in my office once my yarn shelf is complete, because man, is it funny to look at. And like we have the red yarn for the mouth. It told me to embroider eyes and a nose on, so I did that. And there wasn't any particular instruction about where to sew things on, so I just kind of made it work the best that I could. And it came out really, really funny looking. So anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and get started working on the top hat and monocle. This came out a lot smaller than I expected it to. I hadn't read through like the steps of the pattern or anything like that. So I imagine the top hat isn't gonna take me a lot of time if it's just gonna be like this teeny little top hat to fit this fox. So let's go ahead and get started on that pattern and see how quickly we can get it done. All right, guys, I'm finished with the monocle and the hat. And of course, I want to mention that the hat and the monocle are both like part of the pattern, and they have a kind of like variable size depending on how you do it. So it says chain 40, for example, for the monocle frame, or any multiple of 4. So I ended up chaining 12, and then I did round 2. I skipped round 3, and then I just ended up sewing it onto the fox just so that it would be proportional to this little guy's body. As well as the hat. The hat is also the same way. The brim of the hat is, you're supposed to chain 120, but it can also be any multiple of 12. So I just chained 20, did the second and third row, I believe, and then I sewed it onto the hat itself. And what's funny about the crown part of the hat, the circular part of the hat, is that it wanted it to be 8 inches long. That's the only part that wasn't variable. So this hat would have been like this tall if I made it to the specifications of the pattern. And it's actually kind of really funny to think of. It would have been a really ridiculous looking fox. And I may actually still go ahead and do it because I think it would be really funny. I've just already sewn this hat onto the fox's head, so I might just have to like extend it so that it's 8 inches long, but that would have been really hilarious. I don't know if I have time to do it today, but I brought it up to my husband and he was like, you should have did that. That would have been really, really funny. That would have been hilarious. But I think how he turned out is still pretty hilarious. He looks just cursed, but I think how he turned out is still really funny and actually really cute too. Like, I wasn't expecting this to be so cute. I was thinking it was gonna be really cringy and not really nice looking at all, but I feel like I was able to make something out of basically nothing, and that is a pleasant surprise versus like the last episode of the video. I had one pattern that turned out well, and then the second pattern that I tried out, it was just not working. I could not assemble it the way that it could. There was no way I could make that work, but this one I'm very happy to see that it worked out. And I am actually just happily surprised at how cute and funny it looks, and just overall, I'm happy with the result. And in addition to that, I wanted to mention that in the last episode of this video, I mentioned redoing the pattern of the bear with a fishing pole and overalls. I still am planning to do that. I just haven't had time to do it yet, but I will be making a pattern for that, and I will be making another pattern for this one as well. Probably not as goofy, but I will try to incorporate as much of like the elements of this pattern as I can into the pattern that I make and release for you guys if you're interested. So make sure you follow me on Instagram, subscribe to me here on YouTube if you're interested in seeing that, because I make all of my like pattern release announcements and things like that on YouTube as well as on Instagram. But all of that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed today's video, and if you did, make sure you hit that like button, comment down below what your favorite part of this video was, and if it came out as you expected it would, and overall if you just like how he turned out. I definitely do. I think he's really goofy looking, but he is still really cute. And with all that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed today's video, and I will see you guys next time. Bye!